Hi, once again, this is Joe Vidal, or Radio Joe 007, as you know me on Discord and Facebook. I'm Radio Joe 007 WBD-Horns. Today I'm coming to you to talk about maintenance and servicing on this beast, the WinWing Super Taurus Throttle. This is something that many of us have. Some of us have just now finally recently located a used one on the used market. They're still quite expensive. In fact, they're drawing more money now than they were when they were actually being manufactured by WinWing, now known as WinCTRL. And so that's brought to us an opportunity to need to know how to service these dang things and how to take them apart. The bottom line is, it's not that hard. However, there's no documentation on how to service these things, so I'm attempting to create a video here today that's going to show you exactly which screws you need to take off. The bottom line is that everything that's silver can be taken off when needed. So basically, you do not need to take off these two, okay? These screws actually hold this black plate onto the actual throttle unit itself internally. You also do not need to take off these three screws on top on the end, okay? You don't need these three off. However, you do need this one off. Now, this one is in fact a 2.5. This is a 2.5 metric. This larger one here is actually a 4.0 metric. We have the 3.0 metric, and the 2.5s are all the smaller ones. Then you have these little nuts here that you have to take off there, and on this other end. All right. And that is it. And now we'll show you what it looks like once it's off, okay? All right, now we're going to start by taking off these first three larger screws off the side. These are going to keep it from coming out completely. They lock them down, so we're going to... Okay, so continuing, we need to take off these three screws as we just did, but we do not need to take off these three screws. They hold the top together, and all these nice brush fittings and the hidden wire that connects the LED backlighting for this, or the power for the LED backlight for this friction light. So you don't want to take off these three or risk messing that up, okay? So we take off these three, and we take off these two. So we have another large one here on the end. This one goes all the way through, as you can feel. So we need to take that one off. Then we're going to take this little tiny one off that locks the top of the throttle complex to the bottom. And it also has this little set bar. This is a... all right, get the bar. Now, the bar is not symmetric, so you notice it is actually closer down here to the fitting in. So to make sure you get that alignment right as we're going to put it back together, okay? Right, now we're going to turn this. And we're going to get these in the front. The end cap, we're going to take basically all but these middle screws off, and then the whole thing will kind of slide up and out, as we're going to see. All right, so take this whole unit off, and it's not easy, folks. Getting it out of here now. This is the only tricky part of taking this whole daggone thing apart, and this is why WinWing has all of these wires nicely siliconed or hot glued in. finally. All right. Very carefully out. We now have the whole unit out. And you see the wires. This is the wire that I just repaired yesterday. Right here. As you can see it right there, tucked in nice and neatly. Going to hot glue that in there. And then we're going to tie wrap that down over here. Right there in front. All right. And then we're going to show you how to add the much needed grease right here, and along here, so that this throttle mechanism moves much smoother from the locks through. And oh, I just added grease yesterday. It is so much nicer, folks. That grease goes right here along this front edge, along the inside, and you want to use basically, as you're going to see here, the white lightning grease that you can get from any auto mechanic shop or Ace Hardware, Home Depot, you name it. It's very simple to apply. It stays in place, and it makes this mechanism move so much smoother through all the positions. All right. Okay, now let's get to hot gluing that little spot. All right. Okay, we're back. This is Radio Joe 007 again. This time I'm sitting down at my bench where I have my soldering iron and my hot glue gun, and I'm going to be adding the hot glue spot onto the little wires that I had to fix yesterday. So this is the wire right here, and that's the wire that goes underneath. This is that powers the backlighting for the friction bar, right? You see how the friction bar there has the wiring that goes underneath there. That was severed when I got this used part, or this used throttle, I should say. And I am now going to put some hot glue onto that soldered wire joint to make sure that it never gets pulled off again. Now, before we can do that, we need to make sure that we carefully feed the wiring up through the brush and through the hole above the frame above the brush, and that will allow us to feed it up into and underneath the area where we're actually going to solder it into the bottom of the friction backlighting connector. Okay, so now the hot glue has cooled off, and we're going to take a nice close-up look here. You can see that the hot glue is nice and opaque, and it fills up that entire space there. So we don't have to worry about it impeding the brush, metal back of that little brush piece that goes in there. And we know that the wires are going to be held securely because we've filled up that entire spot that's cut out in the WinWing form perfectly for those wires. All right, we are back, and this is Radio Joe, and I now have the system back fully in its case, nice and neat. And as you can see, all the lights are working. I've got all the silver screws and nuts back on as we put them back on in exactly the same order we took them off, in reverse order, that is, than what we took them off on. As you can see, the friction light fully working here very nicely, and I have SimApp Pro open in front of me. Everything is working very smoothly, and now with that nice grease in there, it is so buttery smooth. And I took the time to go ahead and actually adjust this center locking lever. This isn't a center locking lever adjustment. This is actually simply a detente feel for the max position. When you tighten that in there just so, it tightens us in so that you can feel the detente position for mill power, not max, mill power. So you actually feel that spot right there at mill power, and then you can go past mill power, pull up your finger locks and go past it. Or actually, you can just simply push past it as you could in an actual F-18 jet, which is correct. However, you do need the finger locks up to actually go to the off position. You don't want to accidentally shut your engines off and have to restart everything, including your electrical and everything else, as we know. That's a real pain in the butt in DCS, and I'm sure it's just as bad in a real thing, folks. So it's nice to have it all back and working now in its proper order and all cleaned up. And by the way, there's another misnomer in the sink screw. That's the thrust sink screw up here, right? So the thrust sink screw is actually just simply again, the feel, so that you can feel when these are together, because it's a locking screw with a spring-loaded ball bearing in the end of it. When you tighten it in just so, actually it creates some nice separation, and you can see the throttle handles now actually have some separation. Without that sink screw, those throttle levers our handles are right up next to one another and could actually cause friction, scrapage, as had been, and a perfect example in these two handles had some scrapes in them and cuts in them from cutting back and forth. So if you adjust that, as it's called, the thrust lever sink screw, correctly, you'll get some nice separation there, and you'll feel when they are in fact in sync. And of course, the neutral feel here is really the neutral feel tension for, once again, for the left lever here when it passes the mill speed detente. So the mill speed detente is both set in both the left and right levers, and that is named thrust lever neutral feel tension. It's not a neutral feel tension, okay? It's actually the mill power detente tension, so that you can feel that. So if you've ever wondered what the heck that thing does, that's what it does. And you're going to want that so you can actually feel well when you're at mill power. So that's it for today. It completes our video here with Radio Joe 007. Thanks for coming and spending the time with me today. I hope this video has helped you out and has helped you do the necessary maintenance or repairs on your WinWing, now known as WinCTRL Super Taurus Throttle. Have a great day, folks, and safe flying.